Hello everybody, it is Nicole from iiKiui, and welcome back to my Elemental series, but this time it is a take 2. So yes, the series is back, but first, before I continue on, I want to redo all of the old ones that I did in the past, and then continue on from there. It is also just going to be called Elementals instead of Elemental Ladies because I plan on drawing some dudes, so get ready for that. That might take a while, but I will draw guys. My plan for these videos is to do them once a month, so for this month, January 2019, it will be fire, and then next month we will do water, and it will just continue from there. I hope you guys are just as excited to see me draw it as I am to share it with you guys. It has definitely been a long time coming, and I'm so thankful that so many of you are patient and understanding, and you guys know what's going on in my life, that you understand that I needed time. So thank you all for being patient and sticking with me and supporting me. Couldn't have done it without you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the drawing. So here you see the drawing is already transferred onto watercolor paper, and there are two reasons for this. The first reason is because it's just easier for me to sketch off camera. It lets my ideas flow and I don't have to finish it in one sitting. And the second reason is because I don't have to do it in one sitting, I can get a better drawing out. So if I were to sketch on camera, I usually rush it and don't really think it through, and this would probably lead to a very half-done job of a drawing, and when I do it off camera, I can really think about the idea and just develop this drawing that I want to put out to the world and show you guys. So what you're seeing in the video is actually something that I'm 100% happy with. I really love how it turned out, and I think it shows my skills as well. So I hope you guys are okay with that, because it just allows me to show you guys what I'm capable of, and it allows me to show my best work. So those are my reasons why I'm not going to be sketching elementals on camera, and for that reason I can focus more on my coloring skills, because these are the skills that I find I need to work on more than my sketching skills or my line art skills. The coloring is what is most challenging for me, 100%. Like I've said in the past, I've always struggled with contrast in my drawings. They would always either be too dark or too similar in a tone that it would be pretty difficult to see if I didn't line it with another color. So for this one and for future elementals, I'm going to really focus and push on the contrast that I put in these drawings. Also, if you're interested in seeing my process, the materials I use, and maybe first attempts, color swatches, sketches, things like that, I will leave a link down below to the behind the scenes video for this elemental, which will be on my second channel. So if you want to see any of those things, there will be a link to that video in the description. So in my sketch, it is very line work driven, so I just focus on cleaning up the line art and making sure it is crisp and easy to see through watercolor paper, so when I transfer it, it pretty much looks the same. And because of this, the coloring part of it kind of gets lost because I don't focus on it as much. I do shade in the sketch to make sure that I know which parts are dark, but that pretty much only covers part of the colors. So I ended up doing the color swatches digitally, and the first time I did it, I tried to make her skin a gradient almost, and when that transferred onto watercolor paper, it just didn't really look the same way that it did digitally, and it took away from her hair, which is the main focus, because that is the actual flame. So ultimately I ended up doing what you see here, which is this red-brown, and I kept it a red tone of a brown just because I wanted to keep that heat and emulate that fire aspect of it without making her completely red. And then on our hands, I wanted to make them glow but I accidentally put too much of this yellow orange instead of the actual yellow and white, so it made it too dark to make it glow. And I tried to take it away, but it was kind of stuck on there already, so even with water it would not come off. But I just rolled with it, and I blended that into her arm because I didn't want her whole body to be a gradient, because then it would just look exactly like her hair. So I ended up just making it up the forearm and then ending around her elbow. Because I wanted to start with the lighter colors on her skin, I started around her little lava rock patches and I made those glow. So I made sure to keep a section of it white, and then I went with yellow, yellow-orange, and then orange, and then I wanted to blend the orange into the skin, which is the red-brown. Originally, she didn't have this, but when I did a color swatch, she felt very plain on her body, and I tried adding this in, the glow under her rocks, and I really liked it, so I decided to do it here, and it kind of challenged me because I'm not very good at watercolors, in the sense that I'm very bad at layering and figuring out what part's lighter, so it really made me think about which part I had to do first. So because the rest of her skin is darker, I had to do the parts with the lava rocks first and then go into her skin, which is darker, and add on from there. Now a lot of this watercolor section is focusing on her skin tone because I struggled with getting the right color and the darkness that I wanted. So because I knew her hair was going to be light to like a medium tone, I wanted her skin to be a mid-tone, and then her dress was going to be black, so I knew it couldn't be light enough where it wouldn't contrast enough with the background or her hair, but it couldn't be too dark where you wouldn't be able to see the body. So at first, the skin was definitely too light, and it was very difficult for me to build up. And I don't know if it's just because I'm really bad at watercolors or just I struggle with laying down a dark color, but it was too light and I kept layering and layering, and because my heat gun broke, I actually had to wait and do what other people do and wait for the watercolors to dry. But also because I'm impatient, I didn't do a very good job at that. So what happened was I ended up layering it too much that the paper almost ripped around her neck area because I wanted to darken that area, but it wouldn't work, so I kept layering on more brown, and it ended up ripping the paper to the point where it just turned white again. So at that point, I ended up stopping for the day because that was the part where I just knew I had to stop and take a break and just let it dry completely. So the next part that I covered was her hair, and I particularly am very happy with the outcome of this because I actually looked up a lot of reference for fire and how does it like wisp and what does it look like. So the way that I originally drew it, which unfortunately I erased in my original sketch, but the way I originally drew it was very cartoony and similar to my original elemental fire, which is not how fire looks. So when I looked it up and looked at references, it makes such a difference. The end result looks completely different from what it started off with, and I think it looks more realistic and just more fiery. So all I can really say is that I'm really happy with how the hair fire turned out. I think it looks really good. I think that the colors worked really well, and I'm so happy they blended together well. For the parts around the hair, they were supposed to be kind of like ash and embers, so I was keeping them black or slightly tinted just to kind of emulate that they're burning. It looks better in the sketch, I will say, but I still like how it turned out. I really enjoyed the overall concept of it, and I put a lot of thought into what I should include. I looked up a lot of reference, so these elementals are definitely something I put like a lot of thought and time into, and I'm really proud of them. So I hope you guys are enjoying seeing the process. But anyways, the hair was pretty simple for me because I knew I wanted it to be a darkish red on the tip end and then go to a yellow on the top of her head. So the next part that I did was the lava that was supposed to be underneath her. Although it doesn't really look like lava now that I'm looking at it. I just wanted it to look like it was glowing underneath, so I kept it white underneath her, then a light yellow, an orange, and a red on the outside. And the first layer was very pastel, but I didn't realize this until I stepped away and I came back the next day, which is when I realized it was too light. So then I added on another layer, and this did it for me. It made enough darkness to see the color, but it wasn't dark enough where it would take away from her hair, which is supposed to be the most vibrant. So the part I did next were the lava rocks that are underneath her, and originally I was thinking of doing it in a water brush pen that was really dark, but because of my experience with accidentally putting water on a certain part and then it bleeding everywhere, I decided to go for the Artline fine liners and just use a black pen instead. This part is pretty self-explanatory. I just outlined it in black and shaded it in one direction. Although I did not color it in completely, I did leave little bits just so that the color underneath could shine through. And surprisingly, this part was quite time consuming. So at this point I have most of my colors in, and the part that she's missing is one of the more important parts because she has no clothes. So I added in her kind of like soot ash dress that's made of maybe charcoal dust. I'm not entirely sure what the correct term would be, but I thought it would be cool to make it almost ashy and just seem like particles. Not saying she's naked, but she has this kind of dark particle dress that's made from all the ashes from her hair. Not only does this emulate the color scheme that I had in my original elemental fire, it also added a lot of contrast in the image that it needed, because the only dark parts were the rocks underneath and then the rocks on her skin. So it definitely needed that darkness on her body to contrast her skin color and then the bright hair. So originally I used a black watercolor and I just used a brush, but it came out too gray. It wasn't as dark as I wanted, and this is also one of the parts where I would struggle with contrast because I wouldn't want it to be too dark. But for this one, I pushed myself and I got the water brush pen from Color It, and they have a black pen. So I went over the entire thing in that black pen and it was like pitch black, which was perfect. And I left some of it, the grayish watercolor, just to have almost a gradient, like it's fading. But for the majority of the dress, I kept it the very dark black. So when I came back the next day, I saw that it did still lack contrast in the actual coloring. So what I did was I decided to make this more of a mixed media project. I took some of my markers and I decided to go in with that. So I used a dark brown or a sand color from my Copic markers and I shaded in the parts that needed to be shaded. So for example, underneath the neck, under her lip, under her nose, on the inside of her ear, under her arm, and under her thighs. And these are the parts that I did struggle in getting a darker color. And then to blend it out a little bit, I used another Copic marker in beige, and I kind of went over the entire thing in beige, loosely. So not only did this really help bring out those shadows that I wanted to show, it just helped me unify the entire thing, and I was really happy with the result. I also went in with a orange and a yellow around her like magma rocks around her face, just to give it a little bit more darkness. Because I did outline these in a water brush pen, which was a mistake, I didn't want to use water because I knew it would just bleed and make it all muddy, so I just used a marker instead. And then I outlined the entire thing in black, except for the hair and her hands, which were in 4 different colored pens: red, orange, yellow orange, and yellow. I did this because I wanted it to seem almost lineless for the flames and the parts that just had enough glowy bits. Originally it was going to be black, but I felt like that would have flattened it a lot more than using the colored pens, and I'm glad that I used the colored pens in the end. And then lastly, I went over some parts in a colored pencil, and I used a Prismacolor color erase in Tuscan Red. I used it for her lips, and then any part that's shadowy, I just wanted to add a little bit more, so I used it there. Okay, I lied. That's not the last thing. The last thing I did was I took some liquid leaf in gold, and I applied it to some parts that I made a mistake. So there's a part on her shoulder with the lava rocks that started bleeding when I was putting it on because it didn't wait enough, so it was still wet, and they merged together. And this was not the intention. I didn't like how it looked, but I couldn't go back. I couldn't use white because her skin was not white. And I ended up combining a couple of rocks just to make it look like it was intentional, but it really wasn't, and it still bothered me. So I added the gold on parts of the rocks on her skin, and then I added gold around the fire embers because the original plan was just to use it there. But because of that mistake, I ended up using it on her body as well and adding it to the ends of the soot dress too. So it turns out that mistake actually helped and let me add in gold in some places that I didn't think that I would. So anyways, that wraps up this Fire Elemental remake that I'm doing for the Elemental series. I hope you guys like how she turned out. She is definitely different from my original Elemental Fire, but I think she has similarities. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the new elementals. Remember, there will be one every month, so be on the lookout for that. I'll probably do a premiere for each one, so I hope you guys will join me for those. Thank you guys again for all the support and sticking with me even though I haven't done this series in almost a year. But now that they're back, I hope you guys are happy seeing the elementals are back, and they're definitely drawings that I'm super proud of, and I hope you guys really like them too. So with that, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Keep drawing, keep painting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!